In the future, a creature emerges from the earth and destroys human civilization. But strangely enough, these creatures never set foot in the Rocky Mountains above 8,000 feet, as if the area is under a spell. For 3 years, Will and his son survived in the ultra-high Rocky Mountains, where life returned to its most primitive form. But Nina, a scientist, never gave up on the chance to fight back. She worked day and night on a variety of bullets, but none of them could penetrate the monster's skin. But on this day, the piece of life was broken. Will's son has been suffering from a chronic disease, but with the sudden deterioration of his condition, the only remaining medical supplies on the mountain are unable to sustain his life. Will had a bold idea. So he came to Nina's house hoping that she would accompany him to the hospital halfway up the mountain. It turned out that Nina owed Will her life, and she had been studying monsters since they were first born and knew all about their habits. And Will didn't act hastily. He knew of an abandoned mine that led directly underground to the hospital. Early the next morning, Will left his children with his aunt and went to the ammunition depot. But he didn't realize that his best friend, Katie, had somehow learned that he was going to the hospital, alone. She'd rather be eaten by monsters than live like this, so Will has no choice but to take her with him. Soon the 2 women and 1 man were walking down the cliffs. Not far away were the traces of the battle between the military and the monsters. While Will was worried about whether there were monsters hiding in the pit, Nina said that there was a strong biomagnetic field in the monsters, so she had brought a compass. Now the needle hasn't changed, so the creature isn't nearby. Soon the group crosses the 8,000-foot elevation line and officially enters monster territory. The 3 of them arrive at the battlefield they've just discovered and start searching for useful supplies. Will finds a grenade launcher and gives it to Katie, while Nina finds a piece of monster skin on the ground. After gathering their supplies, the 3 of them set off again for the hospital, while the forest has been overrun by animals in the 3 years since the humans disappeared. Soon, the 3 of them arrived at the start of a cable car that ran halfway up the mountain, and if they could get it started, they'd be able to get back to the safety of the higher elevations. Suddenly Nina realizes that the compass in her hand is spinning rapidly, and it's clear that the creature has arrived. But on the plains, human speed was no match for the monster, so they split up into 2 groups and Will hurriedly climbed up to the console of the cable car, while the other 2 tried to block the monster's progress. Seeing that the monster is about to enter the range, but that horrible floodlight suddenly disappeared in the forest. Seeing the monster rushing towards the crowd, Will was also in a hurry to connect the power supply. Nina was the first to get on the gondola, followed by Will. But Katie was too far away and had to climb up the pole. The 2 of them keep shooting at the cable car, but the incoming bullets don't stop the monsters. Meanwhile, Katie sees a chance to leap, but Will catches him. The next moment, the creature hooks its claws into the cable, and the overburdened cable snaps in 2. The 3 of them fall through the air, but the 8,000-foot elevation line is right in front of them. The trio is pursued by the monster behind them, but luckily for them, the monster never dares to set foot at an altitude of more than 8,000 feet, so they escape. At night, the trio found a hut by the side of the road, and during the day, the scene left them all in a state of shock. Even Nina, the scientist, was a little skeptical. These monsters came out of nowhere and wiped out 90% of the human population in just 1 month. And what's even more frightening is that they don't rest or even eat, as if it's just their job to kill humans. After a night's rest, the 3 of them arrived at the abandoned mine, but Nina realized that although the altitude here was over 8,000 feet, there must be places deeper in the tunnel that were lower than 8,000 feet. Monsters live underground, and they can tell humans by their voices and changes in carbon dioxide levels, so even the slightest breath in the mine would give them away. But there was no way back. The 3 of them walked deeper into the mine, and after a bit of a trek, Will realized with despair that the passageway leading to the hospital was locked. But then it occurred to him that there was another way around it, except that they would have to descend to an altitude of 7,000 feet. The 3 of them had to find the courage to climb down the pipe and walk faster through this dangerous area. Suddenly Katie felt as if something was following her, and the 3 of them covered their spotlights and then scrambled into a crack in the mine. Will unleashed a torrent of bullets, but they didn't do any damage to the creature. Nina told him to calm down. The 3 of them turned off their headlamps and held their breath, and sure enough, the creature lost its target. A red glowing tentacle reaches in and searches for the humans. Will took out a cold firework, lit it, and threw it on the ground, releasing a large amount of carbon dioxide, which attracted the monster's attention. The 3 of them took the opportunity to peel open the hole on the other side and climbed out with difficulty, but the monster seemed to see through their purpose and disappeared in an instant. When Katie climbed out of the hole, there was a low roar in her ears, and then the monster dragged Katie away. The 2 of them had to fight back their grief and climbed up the ladder to get out of the mine. After escaping the mine, the 2 of them arrived at an abandoned farm, where Will realized that the owner's car was still running. The 2 of them were able to eat a full meal in the house. Will suddenly asked Nina what she was working on in the lab at the beginning of the apocalypse and why the military was so concerned about her, even though Will's wife had died trying to rescue Nina. Nina said that they had discovered that they couldn't penetrate the skin of the monsters with conventional weapons, but that they could react chemically with the grain elements. But just as the research was coming to fruition, the lab was breached by the monsters anyway, and the next morning, Will drove up in his car. The next morning Will got into his pickup and drove towards a small town not far away, and soon the 2 of them arrived at the hospital in a state of disarray, covered by the sound of horses' hooves. Will went to the pharmacy and searched for medicines, but then Nina's compass was spinning wildly, and it was clear that the monster was nearby. But at that moment, the compass in Nina's hand was spinning frantically, and it was obvious that the monster was nearby. The two of them didn't dare to wait to collect the medicine and rushed out. But the monster had already arrived and countless tentacles were coming through the walls towards Will. Panicked, the two of them rushed towards the roof. But suddenly Will was entangled by a tentacle. Nina grabbed a fire axe and slashed at the tentacle. There was a metallic clash in her ear, but the monster let go of Will. But soon they were cornered. Will looked at the oxygen tanks and had an idea. He hit the tanks and exploded to repel the monster. The two of them looked at the monster lying motionless on the ground, which made Nina's heart hopeful again. It seems that these monsters are not invincible, so she asked Will to send her to the laboratory. After all these years of research, she had a way to kill the monster but lacked the equipment to verify their own conjecture. In order to take back the home from the monsters, Will did not hesitate to drive Nina towards the laboratory. Will arrived at the laboratory, guarded around Nina and cobalt element and other reagents mixed together and then applied to the bullet, but as the bullet shot out of the monster's skin did not even leave a trace of it. Will urges her to get out of here, but Nina wants to stay for one last attempt, so she tells Will to leave first. It turned out that her car was parked nearby, and if the experiment continued to fail, then she would drive away. But no matter how Nina adjusted the ratio of the reagents, the bullets couldn't penetrate the monster's skin. At the same time, the monster had arrived in the neighborhood. Nina looked at the power cell and suddenly realized something. She reconfigured the ratio of the reagent and applied it to the bullet. On the other hand, Will was driving towards his home, but he didn't realize that the car suddenly had a flat tire and rolled around in the air, and then completely stopped moving. After a while, Will woke up and kicked the windshield with all his strength, but the noise attracted the monster to him. Sensing something was wrong, Will ran up the hill, with the monsters in hot pursuit. 8,000 feet above sea level was just around the corner, but the monsters surrounded Will from all sides. Will tried to make a last-ditch effort to fight back, but even with all the bullets in his arsenal, he couldn't do any damage to the creature. Just when he was in despair, Nina, who had succeeded in her experiment, rushed over and used the special bullets to kill all the monsters. But when they looked at the wreckage of the monster, they were surprised to find parts scattered all over the ground. So the so-called monster has always been a robot. No wonder they do not need to eat and sleep, but also set the program cannot exceed 8,000 feet. But who created them? Although there are countless doubts in their hearts, the two of them still returned to the village first, and then raised the pirate flag that signaled a counterattack. Soon the flag spread like smoke to all the survivor villages, with a way to deal with the monsters. The people worked overtime to make special bullets, and together they vowed to reclaim their homeland.
Yeah, to watch the continuation of the part 2 of this movie, don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Anytime we post our new videos or movie series, you will be the first person to see and watch as well.